Have again the enormous pleasure and privilege to invite to the podium the Minister of Economy of Bulgaria, Mr. Kirill Petkov, who is the national coordinator for Bulgaria for the 3Cs initiative, and he will open the day with remarks. So, Minister Petkov, please, the podium is all yours.
Good morning, everyone. I'm so happy to see already friends that I knew from before, but also friends that we met yesterday. So, first of all, I want to say a couple of sentences what happened yesterday and what are some of the expectations for today. I'm very pleased to say that yesterday some business deals were struck. So it's not just wording. We had important deals like the purchase of 50% of the Overgas shares, the gas distribution company from Linden, from the US company. We had meaningful discussions with the giants Amazon, Google, on a variety of areas. I know that many companies started talking about specific projects among themselves, which was great to see. Also, two new strategic ideas were starting to take more tangible shape. The first strategic idea is maybe that we need to think about an additional second fund that would specifically foster innovation. What we discussed with many of my colleagues is that infrastructure is essential and, of course, a prerequisite to everything, but infrastructure that is not there to move minds and people would not be as effective, especially in the digital space. In addition to servers, optic fiber cables, and 5G, we need to have a special vehicle to make sure that the actual people that can use this infrastructure move along. So I'm opening the idea of innovation vehicle as part of the 3Cs initiative. The second thing is about definitions. Definitions of what our current infrastructure titles require. For example, digitalization maybe should not be just the physical infrastructure. Maybe we should talk about content. We should talk about applications that are used on this digital infrastructure. So broadening the existing definitions and maybe putting in a new definition of innovation. We discussed it with some of the panelists yesterday even, that keeping our smartest people within the 3Cs region should be a major, major priority. So having said that, I also want to say that in the end of the day, probably the most important part happened after the panels, because we cannot talk about cooperation, coordination, innovation, unless you know somebody, a person that you can pick the phone to on the other side of the border, on the other part of the other countries. So this intangible probably is the most tangible part of this initiative. Having said all this, I want to also present the speaker after me, who is on a video call. I'm so happy that we had such a high-end representatives from all the 12 states, but also from Germany and from the United States and Greece, of course. The next person that will congratulate and be part of the 3Cs initiative is US Secretary of Commerce, Gina Raymondo. An interesting fact about her is she's coming from a working class family. Her father was a factory worker for many years, laid off at some point. She used to go to public schools, but graduated Harvard best in her class, and then graduated from Yale Law School, then went into the private sector as a venture capitalist before she entered government, when on March 3rd, 2021, she was selected as the 40th US Secretary of Commerce. With this, we can maybe play the video.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here with you. Thank you, Mr. Petkov, for that wonderful introduction, and thank you to the government of Bulgaria for organizing this important event. And thank you to the American Chamber of Commerce for all that you do to support U.S. businesses in Bulgaria. The Biden administration believes that the most effective way to address pressing global challenges such as COVID-19, climate change, and economic recovery is alongside partners who share our values. From the U.S. perspective, the 3 Cs countries are vital national security allies and key trade and investment partners. For example, in 2020, U.S. exports to the region totaled over $17 billion. Recently, Bulgaria worked with U.S. energy companies to diversify its energy supply, but it doesn't stop there. We're committed to deepening our commercial ties with Central and Eastern Europe even further in the months and years ahead. We recognize that attracting businesses from abroad starts with strengthening infrastructure at home. As you may know, the Biden administration is pursuing an ambitious domestic agenda through the American Jobs Plan. The plan makes historic investments in rebuilding our infrastructure, creating millions of jobs, and positioning the United States to compete on the global stage. Additionally, the U.S. is now a lead partner in the G7's Build Back Better World initiative, and we're mobilizing our full range of development finance tools to support it. I know that the 3 Cs initiative shares similar goals of expanding commercial ties between its countries, and I applaud you for promoting infrastructure, energy, and digital connectivity in the region. I know these sectors are a national security priority for our NATO allies, and we look forward to sharing best practices. But we also know governments can't achieve these goals alone. We need the private sector. And I'm delighted that the 3 Cs initiative includes U.S. companies and regional AmChams. American businesses are eager to invest in the region and contribute to its economic development. But to attract more U.S. firms, 3 Cs members must continue to improve the business climate and fund priority projects. The Department of Commerce stands ready to help 3 Cs members do just that. Please don't hesitate to reach out to my team and the AmChams on specific recommendations. We are here for you. Enjoy the rest of the forum.
Cordial thanks to Minister Petkov and the entire team of the Ministry of Economy who have been so helpful with organizing this conference. Now I have enormous pleasure to introduce somebody who I very much respect as a colleague, as a friend, and who has represented Bulgaria wonderfully, not only now at the European Investment Bank, but she ran the entire preparation and hosting of the Bulgarian presidency of the European Union a couple of years ago. So without further ado, Liliana Pavlova has come all the way from Luxembourg to address us on behalf of the European Investment Bank. Liliana, please, the podium's yours.
Good morning, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Dear Minister Petkov, thank you very much for inviting me and for giving me the opportunity to address you today. Distinguished panelists, dear colleagues, dear friends, dear partners, on behalf of the European Investment Bank, I would like to congratulate you all and for this excellent and timely event. An event and a business forum, the summit of the 3 Cs initiative is a very, very important and provides an excellent ground for discussion of all of us. Though the initiative was established and was launched 5 years ago, it is clear that the situation now with the COVID pandemic, with the challenges and the opportunities in terms of recovery and resilience, but even more with climate and digital transition require determined actions in terms of investments. Over the past decades, prior to the pandemic, the EU member states of the Central and Eastern Europe had made remarkable progress. Investments in these member states, with the support of the European Union, together with the reforms undertaken, has led to economic growth. and increased competitiveness of the economies of these member states. Their economic growth was at a higher level than the rest of the EU, which allowed the economies and societies of Central and Eastern Europe to catch up progressively. In order to further enable the countries of the Central and Eastern Europe to converge with other more developed European member states, to experience inclusive growth and leaving no one behind, there are still massive investments needed to be done. This is one very important observation, I should say, because there, unfortunately, there is a significant infrastructure gap, which is still to be filled, and this is a legacy from the past, from the history. All ourselves, the economic operators, citizens, businesses, can all experience these infrastructure gaps. For instance, when trying to connect from one country in the region to another, especially on the south-north axis. So in this situation, what we face that the situation is holding back the full economic potential of this great region. For many years now, the European Investment Bank has been supporting and continuously supporting the countries in the region in order to tackle the territorial inequalities and supporting cohesion and convergence. Over the last 5 years, the European Investment Bank and the European Investment Group, we have invested more than 24 billion euro of infrastructure financing in those 12 countries of the region, which are participating now in the 3Cs initiative. These investments, together with the different European cohesion policy funds and instruments, enables the region to boost connectivity with the construction of new railway and road links, part of the Trans-European network, also to modernize assets and to invest in sustainable energy efficiency, and infrastructure. Moreover, our bank's in-house capacity and advisory and technical support available plays a key role in overcoming constraints, capacity constraints in the public sector, in the regional authorities, in implementation of the different projects and preparing the different strategies and projects. And most importantly, of course, providing the necessary support in building a strong pipeline of projects. Because connectivity and infrastructure investments require a truly cooperative approach. The EU policies foster the development of integrated infrastructure on the basis of the trans-European corridors and networks. And from this perspective, the 3Cs initiative fits very well. It comes in complementarity with all efforts promoted by the European Investment Bank, by the EU, and all together with our partners in other international financial institutions, with all national promotional banks and institutions, with the private sector together, we can join efforts in this endeavor. We at EIB are pleased already to be able to contribute to the development of some of the key priority projects which were already identified under the initiative. And we are ready to continuously support and provide on a project-by-project basis the necessary financing and support in order to accelerate the implementation of the projects. Now it is clear with the COVID pandemic, which has a devastating effect on everyone, on economies, on businesses, on societies, it requires a stronger political reaction to enable a swift recovery. Reliable and smart infrastructure are key for the recovery, for the economic growth, for sustaining and creating new jobs. Significant amount of funds and investments are needed also to seize the opportunity of digital transition and also, as Minister said, for innovation. Establishing an European innovation ecosystem must be a priority for all of us. And we shall not miss the opportunity to make all investments greener and strongly supporting the digital transition and building the innovation capacity. At the same time, emerging from the pandemic, investment needs to tackle another very important topic and a priority ahead of us, which is the climate change. Europe is moving towards climate neutrality by 2050. With important milestones to achieve this very ambitious target, especially in the decade to come. And here, we, the European Investment Bank, being an EU climate bank, are really strongly committed to support all institutions and private sector in this endeavor. What we have planned is to mobilize €1 trillion of investments in the decade up to 2030 to support climate and sustainable investments in order to enable achievement of these specific goals. Of course, this could only be achieved if we take concrete actions in different sectors and we build the necessary infrastructure to enable this. So this could be a double win strategy. In short term, massive investments in infrastructure will help sustain and provide for job creation. In the longer run, it will boost the productivity and economy and will make sure that we are coherent and convergent. If well designed, the flow of investments could ensure shift to greener economies to be smooth and leaving no one behind. However, we have to admit, cohesion regions of the EU face larger infrastructural gaps, especially if they have to be climate related and when we have significant still missing infrastructure for innovations and for digitalization. And therefore, we shall ensure continuous support to these regions, to these countries and businesses in order to support the infrastructural challenges and at the same time to have them done in a climate-friendly way. We also know that the crisis accelerated the digital transition. It is not anymore a plan or something good to have. This is the new reality. This is the new reality which we had to adapt quite quickly, but now we have to further explore and further invest in this, because the crisis highlighted both the weaknesses, but at the same time, the opportunities ahead of us. So digital infrastructure and innovation ecosystem are a must for the European competitiveness and for the competitiveness of the region and the countries who are part of this initiative. So in conclusion, I would like to use this opportunity today also to praise the initiative taken by Estonia last year to boost the concept of smart connectivity and to link energy and transport infrastructure with digital platforms and services. Really, congratulations, colleague. And last but not least, the countries, all countries participating in the 3Cs initiatives, hopefully all others which are willing and open to join this initiative, offer fantastic opportunities to invest in a sustainable, in a digital infrastructure, and much more. These countries display strong assets like excellent geographical location, skilled population, adequate policy frameworks, and strong and financial backing and support of the EU and of course from the European Investment Bank. You can rely on us. Investments in climate, cohesion, convergence are part of the DNA of the European Investment Bank, and you can rely on us. Only by joining efforts we can achieve the ambitious targets we have set ahead of us. I wish you a successful discussion and successful discussions today. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm looking forward to further extend the opportunities ahead of us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Liliana. Thank you for making the trip. We are really fortunate to have this large conference in presence, but this COVID crisis has not completely gone away, so we really, really appreciate you making the journey and being in person here with us today. I couldn't stress more how indispensable, and I would even say imperative, EIB is when it comes to infrastructure, when it comes to building for the future better meaning building green, building digital, and building with a vision and ambition for a new kind of economy which will be benefit to all, an inclusive economy. So once again, thank you so much for being with us here today. Well, without further ado, we're kicking off with a fantastic panel again this morning. I have Jan Brzezinski next to me from the Atlantic Council. Jan's been extremely helpful over, the last few years in making the 3Cs initiative what it is today, not only from the American side. I cannot count how many events and online and digital I participated, and you were always there any hour, which must have been, you know, very late or very early in the morning in the States. Ian, thank you so much as well for coming to be with us and for being so actively promoting the initiative. Then we'll have Beata Daszyńska, the chairperson of the Polish Development Bank, who is also the chairperson of the 3Cs Initiative Investment Fund, and she will take us through the background of, you know, how this whole thing started and where it is going. Next to Beata is Deputy Prime Minister Atanas Pekanov, another fellow economist. Deputy Prime Minister, thank you so much for making time in your busy schedule to be with us today. Many of you know the Deputy Prime Minister is charged with the responsibility for introducing Bulgaria's national recovery and resilience plan, and, you know, that will be probably something we'll hear about. Next to him would be Michel Czarniak. Michel has come from the DFC, the International Development Finance Corporation of the United States, another financial institutions with which we are looking very much forward to establishing cooperation and working together in the future, especially with the 3Cs Initiative Investment Fund. Joe Phillips, who heads the investments, works very hard on the origination on behalf of Amber Infrastructure, the investment consultant and fund manager of the 3Cs Initiative Investment Fund as well is here. Richard Koenig, the CEO of Enery, our latest large investment with a massive pipeline and capacity here in Bulgaria that's all in renewables and green energy. And last but not least, my very dear colleague and somebody who has tremendously helped with, you know, building to today, Sofia Kasidova, somebody I have worked with for many years, since, you know, the time when we were acceding to the European Union, when she was Deputy Minister of Economy and I was in the Finance Department, and now she is heading our strategy and strategic analysis division at the Bulgarian Development Bank. She was instrumental in the preparation process of the next 3-year strategy for the Bulgarian Development Bank, so she will give us a perspective of local and national development banks. Without further ado, Ian, please take the floor. Would you like to speak from the podium or from here? Please, the podium is all yours.
Ilya, thank you for such a kind and generous introduction, and good morning, everybody. Allow me to use the moment first to thank the President and the government of Bulgaria for hosting this year's, the 6th 3C Summit and Business Forum. Just think about what we saw yesterday. A remarkable assembly of leaders. 3C's heads of state, the presidents of Germany and Greece, the managing director of the IMF, a robust delegation from the United States complemented by a significant bipartisan delegation from the United States Congress. And as a former Senate staffer, I always emphasize it's an equal and separate element of the US government. The presence of these leaders here in Sofia reflects the powerful level of commitment and confidence that is driving the 3Cs initiative forward. The discussion that Ilya moderated yesterday, that must have been quite a challenging task that you had there with those leaders. It underscored that the 3Cs is not just an innovative vision. It is a fully operational endeavor to accelerate the development of cross-border infrastructure in Central and Eastern Europe. So let me share with you 5 key points about the 3Cs initiative. First, the 3Cs is an unprecedented form of collaboration launched and led by the democracies of Central and Eastern Europe. It is an act of self-initiative and self-confidence, leveraging the potentials of the region to create business opportunity and geoeconomic value for itself, the wider transatlantic community, and the global investment community. Second, the 3Cs is all about fulfilling the vision of a Europe undivided, secure, prosperous, and free. The initiative addresses the cross-border infrastructure deficit that still exists decades after the fall of the Berlin Wall. According to the European Union, and President Duda referred to this yesterday, that when traveling by road or rail, north to south in this region, it still takes 2 to 4 times longer than in Western Europe. This infrastructure gap impairs economic growth. It sustains an unhelpful energy dependence on a single source of oil and gas. It limits societal and economic connectivity across the region and across Europe. The three C's will leverage the power of infrastructure to accelerate economic growth, enhance prosperity, and strengthen economic resilience, not just of Central and Eastern Europe, but Europe as a whole. Infrastructure is the critical foundation for a truly single European market space. Infrastructure development is a required element of a transatlantic strategy to dig out of the economic consequences of the COVID pandemic. Infrastructure connectivity is a necessity in a world that is increasingly globalized and that features increased economic and geopolitical volatility. This is what makes the three C's so timely and urgent. My third point, the establishment of the 3Cs Initiative Investment Fund, a focus of this panel, presents a new, innovative public-private partnership, one designed to leverage the power of the market to catalyze regional infrastructure development. 3C states have invested their own finances into this commercially managed fund, a fund whose investments are driven by the goal of securing the highest rate of return and that is free from political interference. It's remarkably, for those of us who are old enough, it is remarkably similar to the structure and intent of the US enterprise funds that helped drive growth in Central and Eastern Europe in the 1990s. But this model, the 3Cs model, is a model in which the countries of Central and Eastern Europe are leveraging their own treasuries. And by adhering to purely commercial principles, the fund will be a spotlight on the economic opportunity present in this region. It will serve as a beacon to foreign direct investment seeking the long-term profitable returns offered by infrastructure. And I really believe that this groundbreaking fund creates a model for infrastructure development that can and should be applied to other regions around the world. Fourth, while this is a Central European launched and led initiative, as an American, I'm proud of the commitment the United States has made to support this undertaking. Literally 1 month to the day following President Biden's inauguration, his newly confirmed Secretary of State, Tony Blinken, delivered to a February meeting of 3C's foreign ministers a robust endorsement of the initiative and its fund. He applauded the 3C's approach to public-private partnerships. He said, quote, "Bringing the private sector to the table alongside governments is a smart way to make a big infrastructure project happen, and a bigger investment fund will make that possible." He went on to say that he and President Biden, quote, "believe deeply in working with our allies and partners because we know that there is power and strength in cooperation. That is what the 3Cs is all about," end quote. And yesterday, we saw ourselves that that point was personally confirmed by President Biden, who stated that the 3Cs will, quote, "enhance the security and prosperity of the region," and he went on to emphasize that the United States will be, quote, "an unfailing partner of this initiative." It's interesting to see that both the Trump and Biden administrations stated that they see the 3Cs as bringing the region, I'm quoting Biden, "closer to European institutions, completing the long-held goal of a Europe whole, free, and at peace." This commitment is shared by the United States Congress, which has expressed through legislation its support for the 3Cs and the fund, and is now considering additional legislation that would further expand U.S. government investment authority into 3C's digital infrastructure. And my hope, as I expressed yesterday, is that this U.S. diplomatic and financial commitment will soon be complemented by Germany and other key members of the Western community of democracies. My fifth and final point is that the 3Cs is poised for success. And the statistics of this region make this absolutely clear. 12 3C member states feature a combined population of 111 million people and a GDP of 2.1 trillion euros. They boast a GDP growth rate of 3.3% over the 5 years leading to the COVID pandemic. And at that time, that rate of growth was projected to be sustained out to 2030. The 3Cs countries bring to the table the EU's highest rates of return for foreign direct investment. In a ranking of EU member states' FDI rates of return in the years leading to the pandemic, the top 6 are all 3C states with FDI rates of return ranging from 7 to 11%. From 7 to 11%. The 3Cs region presents a rare mix of economic and political stability associated with EU membership. Yet they offer national growth rates that are often associated with the developing world. That is a rare mix. That is a rare and appealing investment opportunity. And finally, let me just point out the cross-border infrastructure deficit addressed by the 3Cs is estimated to exceed 500 billion euros. That means when you take into account the region's population and its economic growth rate, if a road, a pipeline, a railroad, or a digital highway is built in the right place, it will be used, it will be tollable, and it will be a commercial success. Let me close by just emphasizing that acting alone, Central European states can often find it more difficult to attract high levels of foreign direct investment. But today, by combining their efforts through the 3Cs, they have generated a geoeconomic mass and a set of opportunities that cannot be ignored by the market. The collaboration behind this initiative and the benefits it is unleashing are impressive. The 3Cs is an initiative that truly merits, on geopolitical, on geoeconomic, and commercial terms, the investment it seeks. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And well, Ian, it's very humbling when somebody like you comes from the States to tell us how well we do, and we constantly discuss here quite often what problems we need to solve, but your partnership and your friendship, not only to the 3Cs initiative, but also to our countries, has been absolutely unfailing and long dated. I remember when you were with the Department of Defense, exactly the time when we were acceding to NATO. And you were in charge of NATO expansion and Europe. And you always really believed so strongly in our region, in our countries, that indeed it's inspiriting your words, and we take it as a very positive message. And I think a fantastic opening for the session today on a very positive note, with which I would like to pass the podium to Beata Deszinska. Beata, you have had very, very busy program over the last 2 days, but we need you a little more to take us through the background and the history of the 3Cs Initiative Fund, how it all started, and how you, as a chairperson of the fund's supervisory board, see the next few years unraveling and unrolling for this fantastic initiative. The floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much, dear Minister, dear audience. Thank you for having me here today. And let me start with my quotation, which I used to start the story of the 3Cs Fund. This is not the story about money. The fund is a story about the cooperation. And let me support this word by the maybe not so short quotation of the great man Henry Ford. If the money is your hope for independence, you will never have it. The only real security that man will have in this world is a reserve for knowledge, experience, and ability. It is what Henry Ford said. And this knowledge, experience, and ability, it is something that we made and we are doing together with our colleagues from the financial institution, from development institution, in this region. How everything has started. The second 3C summit in Warsaw. Everything was closed, especially the street, and we cannot move from our nice headquarters, which survived the Second World War. And together with our colleagues from the management board, we were thinking how we can support this brilliant, at the political level, idea, the 3Cs initiative. And we made up an idea, let's set up the fund. We know how to manage money, and we have good experience in other international funds, together with Germany, France, Spain, and Italy, and EIB. We have another financial vehicle. So, based on this, our experience, let's go and encourage our colleagues from the entire Three Seas region to set up the fund. So number of meetings, number of discussion, and during the third Three Seas Summit in Bucharest, we signed a letter of intent by 6 financial institutions from Romania, from Latvia, from Estonia, from Bulgaria, probably not them, but as you can see, only 6 countries, but now we have 9 countries in the fund, 1 the private investor. So it is huge progress that we made since then. In 2019, we were ready to register the fund after only 8 months. The speed was so huge because in this globally unique. We have this experience, and normally it is time that we need to set up the fund 26, 30, 36 months to establish the legal framework and the strategy. We made this by regular meetings, all countries, all development institutions only by 8 months. And after some months when we are looking for the best professional institution who will be our investment advisor, we have chosen the Amber Infrastructure Group. And I remember with Joe that we were signing our agreement. Okay, we have very professional institution who will be responsible to manage this fund. It was the 26th of February last year. 2 weeks after, the whole world was closed and the pandemic has started. But nothing stopped the fund. And it is over 1 year. And what we achieved? We have over 180 projects in our pipeline. We implemented with success 3 investment projects in 3 sectors: energy, transportation, and digital. Our plan is to collect money, because we plan to have the size of the fund 3 to 5 billion euro. Today we have 1 billion, and we are open for the different type of investors, not only the development institution, but we very welcome private investors around the world and the international institution. As Ms. Pavlova said, we cooperate with EIB, EBRD, World Bank, and the other fantastic institutions, Nordic Investment Bank and the others. And we have very advanced discussion with pension fund and the private equity, like Canada, Japan, South Korea, Netherlands, Finland, and others. This idea and the fund is fresh and needs more time. And these 3 investments, it is the proof of evidence. It is possible to be inspired by politicians and implement some commercial financial vehicle which help us to address our needs. How looks this needs? 600 billion euro. This is the amount of money that we have to spend till 2030 just to improve our infrastructure on the axis north-south, from Tallinn to Sofia and far away, only to build the quality of infrastructure which will be comparable to the western part of Europe. So this is the huge task. The Three Seas Fund, with the 3 to 5 billion, even 6 billion euro, it is the small trigger for cooperation and how we can address these needs, building the commercial investment, and how to look in for the smart project using the money in the smart way. Public budget, EU funds, plus Three Seas Fund. And also it is a good opportunity to encourage the other investors to be closer to this region and build together with us the opportunity in the entire region. Dear colleagues, dear friends, because this cooperation during these 3 years builds this strong relation, and this is the most valuable what we achieved, and I think it will be something what help us to build, what help us to develop this initiative, and also to build this cooperation. I am very, very glad that we have very strong and very professional support from strategic partners like US and Germany, very good talks with Japan, and I believe that through this cooperation we can learn more how to be better organized, how to support our business, how to be better integrated based on our experience, not only through this cooperation, but also to be proud members of the European Union. Building and developing the 3Cs initiative, developing the 3Cs fund, it is how we can build a stronger entire European Union. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Beata. Thank you for your leadership in motivating us all, being at the helm when the fund started, and now you have a flotilla of development banks around you who are getting more and more involved with the fund. Both Ian and you mentioned how crucial it would be to increase the capital in the fund and bring in the private capital, and President Radev, at the meeting with you, but also during the President's session, and on all occasions really stressed the importance of this novel approach which the fund is introducing to bringing in private capital and putting it at work for developing infrastructure, indeed in a very modern way. But what do you see as your main challenge for the near future in terms of bringing in new capital into the fund?
It is something what I mentioned during my speech, the trust. How we build this fund, what type of investment we will implement, and what is the clear rules that we deliver by this fund. So it is understandable by investors, the private investors. It is like in life. If you give someone money, you have to build a trust. And you have to trust them. This person that is very reliable, okay, it is my friend, almost like friend, I can give them money. So if we build the legal framework, we build the trust because we implemented 3 investments, very important investment for this region. And what is the added value for the private investor? Not only the security of the money, but also all private investor has the access through the fund to see the entire region. Not only a single country by country, but the entire region and this potential. If we look at this coronavirus crisis, all the business models, all the supply chains are changing. And we are talking about the nearshoring. The 3Cs region, it is perfect place to build the nearshoring. And we have fantastic opportunity by 3 big main gates. It is gates Baltic Sea, Adriatic Sea, and the Black Sea. And how you use this opportunity, having the ports and the seas? Only through the developing the infrastructure that build the connectivity on this axis, from Baltic to Black Sea to Adriatic, and to build in this entire region net. So cycle, roads, railway, and very important, it is energy, green energy, and digitalization and the digital infrastructure, because it has huge influence how we build the cyber security, which is hugely important nowadays. So I think we deliver all these aspects related with the fund. Now it is the time, and I believe that the 3C Summit in Sofia, it is something that built the turning point. We built a fund, we have proof of evidence that this really exists, tangible, 3Cs investment, huge pipeline, and now maybe last sentence. I have many discussions with my colleagues from the financial institution, from bank, from private equity fund, and so on. And they always repeat me, Beata, Around the world, it is a lot of money. There is a lack of projects. We have completely different situations. So anybody who has the money and don't know what to do with this money, we encourage and invite the private investor here to the 3Cs Fund. We have huge opportunity for all money around the world.
This will definitely come up later in the discussion, and especially with regard to bringing in as well money which is in the region. We talked a lot about what could be done in order to attract the interest of the pension funds, of the institutional investors, who very often, for legacy or regulatory reasons, have been investing a lot of money which is being generated here abroad and, you know, in the most advanced and developed economies of Europe. So perhaps this could be the start of a vehicle which would give a lot of local investors as well an opportunity to put their money invested in such a way that it is speeding up the economic development here, it is bringing return to them, and it is, you know, improving the economy in which one day those who will be expecting retirement from those funds will get it in, not only with good yield and good return, but also in a much more developed, you know, society and economy. With this, I would like to turn to Deputy Prime Minister Pekanov now. Deputy Prime Minister, President Radev, on a number of opportunities yesterday, spoke about the importance of our countries planning together for the future, their efforts in investing in connecting infrastructure with regard to European funds, to European programs, and also what may come out of the National Recovery and Resilience Plans. Unfortunately, the 3Cs Initiative Bank, so new, couldn't be the platform for a more coordinated approach when it comes to the National Recovery and Resilience Plans. But you've been very busy with it over the last month and a half. Take us through what the challenges are and what can really be done so we can supplement at EU level and at administrative level securing the funds from the programs in such a way that, you know, it has some synergy with what we can do with private capital and with development banks' money.
Should I?
If you prefer, please do. Yeah.
It reminds me of my teaching duties. Dear guests, dear colleagues, dear friends, welcome also on my behalf and on behalf of the current caretaker government of Bulgaria. I welcome you very warmly. I'm very happy to see all of you here. I remember some years ago when I landed at JFK Airport in New York, I saw this big banner, America is open to the world. And I think and I hope that our region is exactly the same, open to the world, together. And this is why I value this initiative so highly. We can show by this initiative that our region, the Central and Eastern Europe region, can grow stronger together. We know that in the global 21st century, partnerships and coordinations are the key to success. So that is why I welcome this initiative, and I hope it will bring fruits and very productive talks and results very soon. I'm of course very glad that this forum takes place in Bulgaria. I think all of our countries want to have a more vocal role in global events, in global processes, and we can only do this together. Now, coming to the question of infrastructure, a key question. Europe and our region will need sustainable infrastructure to be built in the next years. That will be the crucial infrastructure for the whole next century. To have this, we need funds like this. We need funds like the European funds, and I'll come back also to the Recovery and Resilience Fund. But we have to, let's start from a more general point of view. I come from a macroeconomic background. Let's say infrastructure is a major driver of prosperity and also of inclusive growth. Infrastructure is not only the highways that we build, but it's also the cheaper bills for utilities that people get. It can be important infrastructure to bridge the digital divide. It can be important infrastructure to bring different services to people. So it has to reach our citizens, and it can also disproportionately help disadvantaged communities. I think nowadays there is a big consensus across all fields in economics that these kind of public investments, public and private investments that we are discussing here, not only bring more growth, but they can also make workers more productive. They can also increase participation of the labor force, and they can therefore help growth in the long run. This is why it is so important to talk about it now. Why? After economic crisis, we know that there is very often stagnation in public and private investment, especially in infrastructure. After the last economic crisis in Europe, for example, there was a 15% decline in infrastructure spending as a share of GDP. And Central and Eastern and Southern Europe have suffered the most from this. This can have long-lasting scarring effects on the economy, damaging the potential for the longer term. And this is why it is so crucial, and so this is really the right moment to talk about this. How we can use these investments, leverage them to ensure that we don't miss this opportunity. Every crisis is also an opportunity to invest and help the economies, our economies in our region. The COVID-19 pandemic has, of course, stalled infrastructure investment, and we should therefore now make every effort possible to unlock them. The countries of the 3Cs initiative are closely interlinked via trade, yet we have not been able, I think, so far to the best possible way improve our digital, energy, and transport connectivity. This is where we have to focus our efforts in the next years. And of course, it is very encouraging what we are seeing also in the US. I remember some years ago I was visiting an event at Columbia University between the two very renowned and prominent economists, Paul Krugman and Larry Summers. And Mr. Summers was complaining. He's a very wise man, but often finding really the right critique to point out. And he was complaining that traveling around the world, very often he was a bit unhappy with the situation of airports in the US. He was saying we need much more infrastructure spending. Now with this decisive bill that the Biden administration has introduced, I think we are moving exactly in that direction, although I'm pretty sure Mr. Summers has other critical points. As usual, wise men, wise economists always find the right economic policy problem to address. So with this, I think the US has realized and shown how important it is also not only for economic growth, but also to keeping the major role in the world to invest in infrastructure. In Europe, the last year has also been difficult, but also we were, I would say, very ambitious, and we managed to find solutions relatively fast. It is really amazing how fast we moved from some very unclear decisions how the European monetary union will move towards the Next Generation EU fund, a major milestone of economic policy making in Europe. The funds that will come from the resilience and from the recovery and resilience plans and the mechanism will be exactly crucial in that area. Infrastructure spending. We have been working very hard and intense in the last 6 weeks with my team and with all the ministries to improve our current version of the Bulgarian Recovery and Resilience Plan, introducing new projects in the area of energy, improving some of the projects in the area of transport. And I hope and I have seen that all European countries have realized the importance of the task. The importance of the task not only to put the best possible projects, but also that these projects reach the society, reach the people, so that they realize why this is important. And here I come to the last point, which is about inclusive growth. Inclusive growth is also, it also presents, I would say, a rethinking. 10 years ago, this was not the most popular term. It was not used as often as now. I remember when Dani Rodrik was explaining what is this, why we need inclusive growth, not only GDP growth, but inclusive growth, meaning that we address the issues that different communities might have, that different parts of the societies can have, and this also goes through communication. We should show and we should realize that people should realize that this investment, infrastructure investment, will be crucial to addressing also their needs, and will help them unlock the potential of their communities, their regions, their parts of Europe. So with that being said, as I said, there has been a lot of revisioning of thinking in recent years, and I'm very, very happy that we are here together and we can move forward, hopefully. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Prime Minister. Indeed, one couldn't stress more how important are the words you delivered with regard to, certain consensus which existed after the previous crisis, which perhaps deprived not only the region but the whole of Europe from inclusive development and growth, as we were massively underinvested and driven by austerity policies after the previous crisis. It was a time when Larry Summers was warning us of the secular stagnation, and that it received a lot of criticism but also support. Do you think that this crisis is a wake-up call enough so we can go to this modus operandi again, in which no other systemic crisis has been overcome in the past without massive investment and targeted investment in infrastructure? Are we at this junction now, and is the consensus in the European Union policy making supporting such an approach?
I think we have made indeed extremely big steps, which were maybe unthinkable 2 or 3 years ago. And I think we are moving in the right directions. Even you can see some people say, well, maybe we are moving too fast and we are making too much. But you know, never let a crisis go to waste. We're trying to use it to move in the right direction. And then the specific calibration, optimization of investment, the size of investment is, of course, something that economists can discuss and fight about all the time. But I think at least exactly the consensus is moving there where we have to go.
Thank you, thank you. As we are racing against the merciless clock, which is in front of me and is, really making me try to do something, I'll start taking questions in a minute from the audience as well, so we can turn it more into a conversation. But before that, I would like to invite Michelle to share a few words first with us about. Michelle, you can speak from your chair, unless you want to be at the podium, but please do.
Oh, I can stay
do
here,
come.
that's fine.
We're very pleased to have you here because you represent IDFC. IDFC, in a way, is a young organization, although it has been consolidated on the basis of existing and long experienced in the region American agencies. Take us through where IDFC is now at with regard to cooperating and working with the countries in the 3 Seas initiative, what opportunities you see, and how you estimate the cooperation with the 3 Seas Initiative Investment Fund may enroll in the future with IDFC.
Absolutely. So let me first just start out and say, good morning, everyone. Dobro jutro. It's such an honor to be here today on behalf of the Development Finance Corporation. Just on a quick personal note, my father's family is from Poland and Lithuania, so it's very personally meaningful for me to be able to be in the 3 Seas region today. I'd also like to note that this is the first official travel that the DFC has done, so I hope that is a testament, that is a testament to how important the 3 Seas region and the 3 Seas initiative is to DFC. And then finally, I'd like to also acknowledge the large bicameral congressional delegation that has traveled to Sofia is a sign of how important the conference is to the United States. So to talk about this question, I'd like to start off with just a little bit of background for framing. So DFC is America's development bank, and it's the newest U.S. government agency. As Ilya mentioned, it's very new. 20 months ago, it was launched in December 2019. And we have a mandate to partner with the private sector to finance solutions to the most critical challenges in the developing world today. So DFC has more than $33 billion invested around the world, and with the creation of the DFC, our investment cap has increased to $60 billion. Our focus is on projects that will deliver strong development impact around the world and to projects that will advance U.S. foreign policy. So Development Finance Corporation, together with its predecessor, the Overseas Private Investment Corporation, or you may know it as OPIC, have a 50-year history of mobilizing private investment to regions critical in importance to U.S. foreign policy. And OPIC was one of the first development institutions to invest in Eastern Europe following the fall of communism, supporting projects that rebuilt aging infrastructure, modernized industry, and bolstered key sectors, including energy and agriculture. So the investment we facilitate really serves as a stabilizing force, creates jobs, opportunities, and helps to foster a more welcoming investment environment. So if we kind of take it to where we are here physically, DFC has more than $1.6 billion invested across all of Eastern Europe today. And historically, DFC and previously OPIC have invested almost $9 billion over the last 50 years in the region. So our focus on Eastern Europe recognizes that the region is of critical importance to U.S. foreign policy, and we are committed to supporting development that will foster economic growth and stability. And a key area of that support is supporting energy security in the region. Access to affordable and reliable energy is critical to your prosperity and security. So for this reason, DFC is authorized to support investment in higher income countries in Europe to advance energy security. Many of our allies here are highly dependent on energy imports and vulnerable to supply disruptions and price swings. So increased investment in energy will help promote energy independence and position more countries in the region to meet rising demand for growing populations. So if we kind of return to the crux of this question, I want to be very clear that DFC continues to strongly support the 3Cs initiative. And our teams are actively engaged in promising discussions with Amber Group, as you know, who's the fund manager for the 3Cs Initiative Investment Fund. DFC conducted extensive diligence on Amber, on the fund, and now we're working out the most appropriate way for DFC to participate. We're very positive about the fund and the way it's run, and our teams are working intensely on a vehicle to enable DFC to maximize its contribution in accordance with statutes that are set by Congress. We know that DFC financing can serve as a catalyst in developing renewable and reliable energy networks that can drive economic development and growth and mobilize much-needed private capital. And so our hope is that we are able to announce our support in the near-term future.
Thank you, Michelle. Well, Joe, Michelle kind of already passed the baton to you, and she mentioned a few times green energy and sustainable energy diversification. You recently closed a big deal with Energy, with Richard Koenig sitting next to you. And we're so pleased to have you both to share a little bit of the experience of this particular investment, but also as an illustration of how the fund works, because there are very many misconceptions quite often how the 3Cs Initiative Investment Fund selects projects, on what merit, on what basis, and how you decide on the pipeline. You had 3 fantastic examples over a very short period of time. You allocated a lot of capital, and the pipeline is active. But take us through how you liked, for example, NRE as an investment, and what a project or an idea needs to have as an intrinsic value, so it is suitable but also attractive to the fund.
Okay, thank you, Ilya. I think I'll try to cover 5 points. Who we are, what is the strategy of the fund, what it is we invest in, and as part of that, why is there a need and why does that lead to an opportunity, and finally, how do you persuade us to make an investment? Because I think that's probably what many people like. That's probably what most people want to hear. So first of all, as you said, my name is Joe Phillips. I'm part of the Amber Infrastructure Group investment team, and I am focused on the 3Cs Initiative Investment Fund. We are a specialist infrastructure fund manager. And since February last year, we've been the investment advisor to the 3Cs Fund. And I do have some slides, but I promise not to use more than 3 of them because of time. But what we are doing in the region is we're trying to build a team. I think this is important. It's not just about building infrastructure. It's about building local expertise and knowledge. It would be a great shame if this fund was managed always from outside the region. So what we've done is we've tried to build a team, and you can see it at the top. This is the start of the team that's based in the region, in Vienna, in Prague, and most importantly in Warsaw, where we've got the bulk of the team. And what we're trying to do is build up the local expertise as well that backs the fund's ability to invest. But that's supported by our teams outside the region in London and elsewhere in Munich. So let me briefly cover this, because this...
Very briefly, please. Yeah,
yes,
we are really failing on the clock
very
today.
Briefly.
Yeah.
And it was said by the IMF yesterday, the region has had less impact from the pandemic, is bouncing back faster, and has fundamentally greater economic growth for the future and a massive infrastructure need. So that's that. So what do we invest in? We invest in infrastructure assets in 3 sectors, and I'll come to that. And these assets are greenfield, and our definition of greenfield is either pure greenfield or assets that have very significant capital expenditure requirements in the future. We're here to create or help create new infrastructure assets in the region. So it's a greenfield focused fund, but that includes capital expenditure. We invest in transport, energy, and digital. Transport is a broad mandate, but our areas of focus are road projects, rail, rolling stock, ports, and airports. Energy is broad as well, but we won't invest in coal or nuclear, and our focus areas are renewable, modern gas generation with carbon capture and hydrogen, and the distribution and transmission networks that support energy in the region. And part of that is both energy transition and energy security. And finally, we invest in digital. So data centers, fiber networks, 5G rollout are the areas of focus. And I think this is a particularly important area for the region because I think it's an opportunity, along with other infrastructure, to reverse the brain drain away from the region to Frankfurt, London, Paris, by providing very high-quality digital infrastructure. And I think increasingly digital infrastructure is also about digital security. So these are the three areas we invest in. And then finally,
thank you.
You'll be happy. How do you persuade us to invest? Well, we don't want to hear ideas. We want to hear concrete proposals for projects that are well advanced and are able to either allow us to deploy capital for construction or expansion or modernization relatively quickly. So we want well-developed, well-thought-through plans and projects that we can provide, that we can do due diligence on, that have been well thought through, that have a clear revenue source, and have a management team and advisors in place that can implement them. And to wrap it all up, the key thing is, if you want to do that, you need to speak to us, and there's the contact details. But the key thing is that when we're doing this, what we really want is the right teams, and that's, you asked the question, why Enery? The reason we invested in Enery is that it had all of those things, but most importantly, it had the right team that was able to take our capital and deploy it effectively and make a commercial return for the fund and its investors, whilst delivering new infrastructure for the region, which I think, as the IMF said yesterday, has a multiplier impact on GDP growth. So it's a nice virtual circle. I think it's a great opportunity for investors, and it's a great initiative for the region.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe. I already see the audience raising hands. I see a gentleman on the left, on my left, willing to ask a question. Do we have microphones in the hall, or we have to manage it some otherwise? No, we probably don't, so see if I can use this one. Please, yeah, if you're loud, then we can hear you. So let's start taking questions from the audience, and then we'll also include our other speakers into the conversation. Please present yourself and ask a short and concise question. Thank you.
I'm CEO of Bulgaria. We are running the airports in Burgas and Varna. And we have, for those who love the numbers, an investment commitment of 403 million in the 35 years of concession. But I want to talk about something completely different. I came to Bulgaria 10 months ago, taking over the lead of our organization.
I'll be very thankful you to ask a question instead of making a statement.
What I want to say is, I see so much infrastructure here that is just rotting away. And I see a reality of life where many people live in socialistic buildings which are simply rotting away. And I hear a lot about how do we create the future. But I would like also the panel to come back to the point, how do you influence the life of all these people who are exactly in this living condition? Thank you.
Okay, this is about the social impact of investment in infrastructure. Anybody else from the audience? Well, Joe, how do we change that?
Let me give you a real-life example, and it's not an example from the region, but it's an example from the UK in the early 90s. In the UK in the early 90s, where this concept of private capital in infrastructure was reinvented for the first time in about 100 years, because it had been there in the Victorian era in the UK. the UK government decided that private capital was going to rebuild schools, hospitals, and other social infrastructure projects. And I spent several years in the early 90s visiting hospitals that were going to be replaced by PPP hospitals. And my abiding memory of those hospitals and those schools were the number of buckets in the corridors to deal with the leaks. And these were infrastructure assets that were rotting away, as you put it. And they were rotting away because it was very tempting when budgets were tight for the government or the local authority or the health service not to spend money on maintenance, because it's easy to cut a maintenance budget and you don't see the impact in the year. But you do see it over 10, 20, 30, 40 years. And I suspect part of it is the same historically here. But now, if you walk into a UK school or hospital that has been provided by the private sector in a public-private partnership, it might be 20 years old, but it will look new. And there won't be any buckets in the corridors, and it'll be very highly maintained. So there's no easy answer to this, but the part of this is that in providing infrastructure through public-private partnerships with private sector investors, it ensures that part of our obligations, because we're there to make a long-term return, are to maintain those assets at the highest standard for the lifetime of 50, 60, whatever number of years it is. So I think there's no simple answer to it. The reality is that providing modern infrastructure with private sector capital should ensure that that infrastructure is world-class and remains world-class for very long periods of time.
Indeed, yeah. And the concession on the airports is such a fantastic example. Sophia and I were at the Ministry of Transportation, then I was at Finance when that concession deal was done. I was sitting on the committee and remember, how curious everybody was about how are you going to give airports to concession. But it worked well, and it's now an example of how public-private partnership in Bulgaria works with regard to infrastructure. It was a very early example. Richard, you recently closed this big deal, and it's big deal not only because it is big, but because it has big potential. You're looking forward to pipeline, which will create new assets here in Bulgaria, but also in a few other countries. How was for you working with the 3 Seas Initiative Investment Fund and Amber as investment consultant to get that investment done, and why do you think this was the right match for your company to find a way of financing and lifting up your equity?
Yeah, Ilya, thank you. Very good question. And thanks for also inviting me to this panel. Going straight into the question, we ran after our initial growth and having invested in power plants in Czech Republic, Slovakia, Bulgaria, and having also built pipeline in a lot of other of the 3 Seas countries, including Romania, Estonia, and Slovenia, we have decided we need a substantial capital raise and get a new co-shareholder in next to Lucas, RP, and myself as shareholders. So we're looking for a partner with a substantial capital contribution, but also more than a capital contribution. We're running a professional process, had a lot of offers, had 4 investors doing due diligence us, and ultimately choose the 3 Seas initiative and the fund and Amber as a fund manager, not because they made the best commercial offer, which they didn't, but because we thought it's the best partner. And I want to refer here to Berta. We had the same thought. It's not about only about the money, but it's about the cooperation. We are a long-term, we are a company. We want to invest in the long term. We think this is a very good long-term partner who shares the strategic vision we have to decarbonize the electricity system, to do very sustainable investments, not to just invest in renewables or photovoltaic, but do that in the most sustainable way, and do that in a way which has a good impact on the local communities, on the regional development. So we have a vision to do 3 things which match perfectly well with Amber. We want to produce the lowest cost electricity in the cleanest possible way, not only to produce that electricity for the country, but also to attract, for example, in Bulgaria, new industries in industrial zones, like in carbon-free industrial zones, and then have a multiplier effect of our investments in the economy, but also for Bulgaria, Romania, other countries to become net green electricity exporters again, because the conditions for renewables are here better than Northern Europe. The second part is we want to create sustainable jobs, right? I mean, there's a lot of discussion about jobs in the sector here, particularly in Bulgaria, in the mining industry and others. We think we create here sustainable long-term jobs, and we have created a lot of jobs as Energy in the first years of existence, and I think with Amber we can contribute that, which will help also the economy and the development. And I think very much here, I think the Free Seas initiative shares this vision. And the last thing, and very important, we want to create sustainable returns. We don't want to invest quickly and leave quickly or be a developer. We want to develop, construct, operate, and be a sustainable investor here in the country. And we believe, if you look at the last 20 years, if you invested in renewable energy in a sustainable way, you also outperformed returns versus the market or other infrastructure investments even. And we thought that, Beata, Joe, Heimo, who we had a lot of contact at the fund, shared this vision with us, and hence we choose them as a partner.
Thank you. Yeah. How big is it going to be? What will be the total capacity when you're done with?
So we have invested today 200 million. We're about to invest another 200 million, and the view is together with Free Seas and debt, we'll be able to invest 1 billion in the next 3 to 4 years in the energy transition. I guess historically we have a bit outperformed our investment plans, so let's see what's come, but definitely we plan to invest 1 billion in the next 3 to 5 years.
How much is billion in gigawatts? How many gigawatts of, projected, rough estimate?
It depends a little bit, but let's say roughly, if you only invest in photovoltaics, it would be roughly 2,000 megawatts of installed capacity.
That is, that's bigger than the nuclear power plant we have here in Kosovo, currently. Well, thank you. It sounds all fascinating. I don't see hands in the audience, but if you'd like to ask a question, please signal with your hand, and Petya will make sure that you get a microphone. And in the meantime, I'll use this gap to ask Sofia. Sofia, you worked very hard with your team on creating this new strategy, and it's a very different strategy of the Bulgarian Development Bank we have now. What is new about it is, for the first time, we have green as a strong focus, we have digitalization as a strong focus, and you introduced certain criteria about sustainability when it comes to investment in the future. Take us through that also with regard to if you see and how you see opportunities for development banks to work alongside with the 3Cs Initiative Investment Fund. Although we're investors there, the capital is mainly Beata's, but partially ours as well. And equity doesn't really go in the same interest with debt. But we're development banks, we're mission-driven. Can we work with our debt instruments together with the fund on project-by-project basis? And what's the role of development banks in this future we've been discussing so far?
Thank you very much. Too many questions for the very short time that we left. But I'm tempted really to answer the gentleman from Fraport. As Celia said, I was part of the government many years ago, and I specifically was in charge of building the new airport and the new runway. And your point is quite right. This is a sad but true picture. And there is no easy answer to that. But I believe that we learned the lessons that we do need really social and inclusive growth. And I believe this phrase of building back better is not just a catchphrase. It really has a meaning and new policy content to that. And the fund, then all the initiatives and the development banks like ours, I think we have an even stronger role to play. And this can happen in few ways. First, I believe the initiative gives us the point that we can develop new impact. We're developing new strategic partnerships. And through the projects that are developed in standards that can be really of use to all of our companies and our economies. So these are new safeguards for social and environmental inclusion. So this is really a step forward. Another point is that the initiative, if development banks have really a stronger toehold in that and put funds together to co-fund all these projects, we can further develop our partnership and we can enhance our development impact. The Bulgarian Development Bank is the instrument of the government for implementing development policies, helping SMEs, and helping businesses to grow. So I see this initiative as a really good opportunity for us to help the business to write this technology envelope that comes with these three major infrastructure, energy, and digital sectors. How we can do that? We can do that because first we are very well positioned. We know the economy. We have this relentless optimism that our business is capable of creating new ideas and projects. Bulgaria has not been a pioneer or front runner in the technology and the IT or energy and infrastructure sectors, but certainly this endogenous and many opportunities that we see for technology development will bring innovation, and we're well positioned to catch on that. So we can co-finance with many instruments that we can easily mobilize. We have enough practice, we have enough knowledge, we understand and know the business, because we've analyzed, we understand the structural components and the predicaments that our economy faces. So we can walk the way together with the business to help and get its benefit from the funds that will be mobilized. Going back to the strategy and dovetailing in everything that has been said yesterday and today, indeed the green and sustainability agenda comes across all these new investment areas. We've been preparing to walk the walk to help the business to make the green transition. But there we have new leadership in the bank. Some of our new directors are here in the room, present with us. And I'm sure that we'll have new strategic adjustments to our strategy that will be better placed and better suited to help the business. And one last point, probably, about the political and geopolitical impacts of this initiative. Much has been said, but I believe that the economic impetus and the economics of that is much stronger. And we see a renewed opportunity for renewed partnership with other development banks and with the European Investment Bank and the EBRD. All these financial behemoths that really will need to put funds together to finance further the huge infrastructure gaps that we see in the economy. And only with financing and growing infrastructure, not necessarily linear infrastructure, but all sorts of modern infrastructure, I believe we can create jobs and we can become more competitive.
Thank you, Sofia. You were VP Finance at the Black Sea Trade and Development Bank, so you know how a multilateral works. Do you think that the 3Cs Initiative Investment Fund can find a way of working with multilaterals, but the EIB? Obviously, we heard what Liliana said in the morning, and I read it as an offer that, you know, on project by project, we can probably find somewhere to cooperate. But do you see other multilaterals the fund can cooperate with on project by project or other basis?
Very good points, and really I'm tempted to see the parallel to that. In the middle of the 90s, the Black Sea Cooperation was very high on the political agenda, and this is how the Black Sea Trade and Development Bank was created. It's a bank, but it pulled resources together, even from countries that were in a permanent political conflict, like Georgia, Armenia, and Turkey, for example, and Azerbaijan. But it worked very well, and with Beata last time we exchanged a few points. It really worked. The bank created a big and huge portfolio. The fund is really very similar to that initiative, but this is now a fund, so it will finance and it will invest in the equity of the companies, and it will go in a really vertical axis as compared to the Black Sea region. Yes, there are many opportunities for all the banks to work together, and as I said, this is not only the pooling of resources to fund the project. But this is the shared vision, this is the shared values, and the way that you have transparency, how you finance a project, the good practice, how you structure it, and the policies that you really need to implement in order for this to have a flying start.
Thank you, Sophia. Beate, how would you respond to what just Sophia said? What is, in your vision, the potential cooperation with the multilaterals and their contribution to the fund?
Taking into account...
And wrapping up our whole discussion, we're coming to a close. So this is your final chance to say what we haven't asked you so far.
Maybe only a short sentence. Coming together is the beginning. Keeping together is progress. Working together is a success. And only to working together and to have and share our vision experience, it is only the way to exit the success.
Thank you. Well, Ian, we have to start making headway to Riga from today. What homework shall we do on behalf of and on the side of the 3Cs Initiative Investment Fund, so when we're in Riga, we actually have moved forward in our work and everything?
Looking to Riga, I would say first we want to further consolidate support within the 3Cs, so we want to convince our Austrian, Slovak, and Czech colleagues to invest in the fund. We want to further institutionalize the relationship between the fund and the DFC. We want to transition EC, European Commission, and German support into something that's tangible, including investment in the fund. And we want to see a private investment into the fund. Yeah. And then finally, I would say it would be interesting to see if we could start seeing parallel investments by financial institutions, like pension funds and such, into some of the projects that the fund, 3Cs fund, is investing in. That's a big agenda to do over the next 9 to 12 months, but I think it's one that's feasible. And I walk away from this conference even more energized about the prospects of the 3Cs.
Thank you. Joe, do you think we can announce in Riga first private investor in the fund? Is it possible?
I think the simple answer is I hope so, and I don't believe there should be any reason why we shouldn't. This is the opportunity is clear. The track record of the fund is being established, and we've made 3, what I would argue, are exceptional investments in the region. And I think that the fund can play a very important role in bringing private capital into the region as part of the funding packages for infrastructure development. It's not the only, public capital remains important, but private sector capital is increasingly important, has been increasingly important in Western Europe over the last 20 years, and it should be here as well. And I think investors will make a better return over the next 10 years in this region than they would in Western Europe. I think Ian made that point earlier. So I think it would be a failure of the market if the private market didn't invest in this fund.
Thank you. Well, Deputy Prime Minister, I would like to ask you to wrap the whole thing up and tell us if, from the perspective of a government, it makes sense. Do you see that an initiative like the 3Cs